Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 47. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation, as we get you guys ready for Sunday's game as the Pittsburgh Steelers are back at Acrisure Stadium, 1 o'clock Eastern Time against the Green Bay Packers. Pittsburgh 5-3, Green Bay 3-5. We'll preview the game a little bit later today. Dave, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm ready for another Steelers game now. It's been too long at this point. So it sets up for an interesting game against two kind of really evenly matched teams, I think, overall. But one that it certainly does feel like, and the Steelers are favored in this one, it's one that you feel that the Steelers should have, and it would be a big one to have too. You know, to move to 6-3 on the season ahead of back-to-back AFC North games against the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. So, you know, not a must-win game, but one of those another one of those ones where you feel like you better win it.
Sure, especially as this AFC North really tightens up with Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, all 5-3, and Baltimore leading the division at 7-2. A little bit later in the show, we'll have a Packers beat writer reporter on to talk Green Bay. That'll be the man that's covered Green Bay for a long time, Tom Silverstein. He covers the Packers for Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. So we'll speak with him here in a little bit and get his thoughts. Dave, as you mentioned, this game in theory could go either way, although I think a lot of people are expecting Pittsburgh to come out on top, but health could certainly impact some of those thoughts and predictions. And from an injury standpoint, some interesting notes for Pittsburgh and for Green Bay. For the Steelers on Thursday, 4 players, all on defense, not practicing. That is Micah Fitzpatrick with his hamstring, Elandon Roberts with his knee, Montravius Adams his ankle, and Kim Heyward with the groin. At this point, hard to expect Fitzpatrick to be good to go in this one. Maybe for next week against Cleveland seems much more realistic. Adams, back-to-back days of not practicing. That's a discouraging sign. Elandon Roberts was limited on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday. Same with Kim Heyward. Never want to see guys going backwards. That means Friday's report's going to be obviously very critical to see how they get listed for this game.
Yeah, I think the thing that you hope for is they're just taking it easy on a guy like Cameron Heyward. You get a little bit of a longer bit of rest time coming off of the Thursday game there, and overall you would hope that he didn't do anything. Didn't he talk about something about on that opening extra point or something that the Titans really tested his groin or something like that. I mean, look, we'll learn a lot, I think, in this Friday injury report with the two guys that did not practice in Elandon Roberts and Cameron Heyward. You don't like to see the guys go backwards, obviously, on the injury report, but both those guys are veterans. With that said, so we'll have to see.
And if Roberts cannot play, of course, they'll be down 2 inside linebackers with Cole Holcomb out for the year with the knee injury he sustained against Tennessee. So if we just for a second assume that Roberts is out, then I assume we will have to think Mark Robinson steps in. Does anybody else come up? I assume they'll make an elevation where either Tariq Carpenter or Mykal Walker will get called up. So depth of that position really will be tested if Roberts cannot play.
Yeah, you have to wonder maybe if they're going to elevate somebody anyway, even if Alexander can go, but might you have to elevate too? That will probably be the telltale sign when it comes to Quan Alexander there. But Elandon Roberts. But hopefully I didn't say Alexander. I said Roberts the first time, or
you said Alexander twice, but we know
okay.
We're talking about Elandon Roberts and the injury. Alexander's good.
Alexander is good to go. My apologies there, but Saturday by whatever the cutoff time is, midday there with
4
the
p.m.
elevations will give us a good idea, I think, of what's going to happen with the Elandon Roberts there. So, but regardless, you might see one get elevated anyway. So
True.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Now, Walker's got a bunch of NFL experience. He was a full-time starter for Atlanta last year. Kind of surprising that guy was hanging out. He got released by the Raiders off the practice squad. This dude had 100-plus tackles last year for the Falcons. So there is experience there. He's pretty new to Pittsburgh. Got signed 2 weeks ago. If that Carpenter has been with Pittsburgh since early September, but much less experience. He's actually a former Packer, so I don't know if that has anything to do with maybe a calculation in the opponent. He was one of those linebacker safety hybrids. He was really a safety at Georgia Tech. I was at the Senior Bowl whenever they invited him, I think, midweek, and they pushed him to inside linebacker. So he's kind of a bit of a tweener. Walker would make more sense to bring up just because of his NFL experience, but we'll see what the Friday report looks like and go from there.
Yeah, hopefully, once again, we'll learn a little bit later on this afternoon. It's hard to speculate, especially when you got veterans like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, keep your fingers crossed that Roberts can play. And obviously the same goes with Cam. They really could use him in this game for obvious reasons here. And, even if they don't get the full, 75, 85%, snap count out of him, his presence alone and when he is in there could really impact what the Steelers do up front.
For Green Bay, they are also looking at some potentially notable defensive players not playing in this game, and that's led by their top corner, Jaire Alexander, who's got a shoulder injury. Matt LaFleur seemed to be pretty pessimistic about his odds of playing in this game, did not even rule out this could be a long-term issue for Alexander. Seems to be surprising the Packers media because I believe Alexander played through a similar injury or shoulder injury in that win Sunday over the Rams, but he has not practiced on Wednesday or Thursday, so that's a discouraging sign for him. And as we'll talk to Tom a little bit later, it sounds like Quay Walker, their top inside linebacker, leading tackler, is not looking good to go in this one. If there is any bright sign for Green Bay, it sounds like Kenny Clark, who got carted up with a shoulder injury last week, is likely to play in this one. He's been limited the last 2 days, and Tom thinks he's going to give it a shot.
Yeah, going into this week, I think a lot of people were kind of caught off guard by the Jaire Alexander injury and all. And most of my focus was on Kenny Clark because, as you said, and we wrote it up right during that game on Sunday, him getting carted off there. But it sounds like he might give it a go, and Jaire won't. And that's that's big for them, especially with the inexperience that they have over at the cornerback position. And they've been pretty decent against the pass overall, especially when it comes to not giving up the big plays. And I think we talked a couple of days ago. What's one of, in a quick look ahead, what's one of the things that concerns you most about the Packers defense? And I think I said the pass defense. Well, if you don't have Jaire Alexander in there, and we'll also see what's going to happen at safety, right? Will they get Ford back, or will Anthony Johnson have to come in and play free safety again for them, like he did against the Rams there? So you could go from what at least on tape seemed to be a pretty good secondary to having a couple of young kids on the outside. And in other words, this could be an area that the Steelers attack. And even if Kenny Clark does play, having to get carted off with a shoulder injury is not great. I think as people will learn in our interview, don't want to give the whole thing away yet with Tom Silverstein. He might have to wear some sort of harness or something there. So he might not be 100% on top of it, as you mentioned, Quay Walker and all. So going to be interesting to see what they filled out there because of injuries on the defensive side of football for the Packers.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and we'll talk about it more when we transition into our Packers preview later in the show. But their outside corners, Dave, are looking pretty weak right now. You got rookies, you got young guys, you got people off the practice squad who maybe, have to see serious playing time. And if you're Pittsburgh, who loves throwing on the outside, loves throwing to Deontay Johnson, and generally speaking, loves throwing to George Pickens, hasn't happened as much the last couple of weeks, but certainly he's capable of those big plays, big games, that's the matchup that you're going to go after probably all day long.
Yeah, and once again, the Friday injury report for both these teams will shed us a little bit of light long after we're done recording this, and then obviously we'll watch both teams for elevations.
Yep. So stay tuned to the site for Friday and Saturday. There's going to be a lot to note from a health standpoint getting ready for this game. All right, Dave, Matt Canada, Teryl Austin speaking with the media on Thursday, as they do every Thursday. We'll start with Matt Canada. What did he say that really kind of stuck out to you the most in his meeting with the media yesterday?
Yeah, not a lot, Bob. Overall, really, he seemed to be in a little bit better mood. I'll tell you that.
166 yards, some decent results will make you a little happier.
Yeah, let's see if there was anything that really stuck out here. Did you see it a little bit more? When talking about the run game, he put it more on, especially on some scheme stuff with the pulling and all like that. He hinted more at volume, being able to have more volume, being some of the reasons why we saw some things and more success in other areas. And it's just, it's not like they've been trying to reinvent the wheel. He obviously pointed to execution being better in that game against Tennessee, which it was. So I don't think there's not, I think he even used, nothing magical's going on there. It's just, look, they executed a lot better. They were able to keep that unit on the field more. And, they obviously, the results were with 166 total yards of rushing in that game.
And it very much sounds like Broderick Jones will start at right tackle. He's confirmed to reporters he's taken the first team reps all week, and Canada complimented his play. Mason Cole did as well. Again, I think for Jones to not just play well, but to play on the right side where he hasn't played much. I know he's gotten some practice reps there throughout the season, but obviously he's been a left tackle for most of his college NFL career. And to do that on a short week with one practice on Wednesday, they didn't practice on Monday. They had a walkthrough Tuesday, but one real practice, and the play that well against a couple of good pass rushers. Heyward Landry's a former high pick and dude that's got some production in the NFL. Can't say enough about how good that performance was for Broderick Jones. But yeah, I think for the run game, there's been some mixed commentary where I think Canada said, well, you saw more pulling and more, runs because they just had the ball more and they were running the ball more effectively. So there was more volume to see some of those types of things. But you heard Dan Moore earlier in the week say, well, we kind of pared down our run game and kind of focused our run game on a couple of concepts. So probably a bit of both in terms of why this run game was more successful, probably a bit more focus and having more success, which leads to more success.
Yeah, look, need to see that, need to start stacking that week to week now. And, you got a Packers defense that's been, pretty decent against the run overall, it feels like on tape. But within that, the way they kind of scheme some things up at sometime, we'll talk a little bit later in this show about how they do some of these TE stunts and even on early downs as well, too, against the run. You time a couple of those up and kind of, if you can see them coming, man, while the looper is happening within that, there is a little bit of gap that opens up, because that's the thing is those stunts are designed to create lanes, right, for the looper to get into. So if you can beat the looper to the hole, you might be able to bust one in there. But I'm excited to see, potentially, can we start seeing some pin and pulls and stuff like that? Now that you have Broderick in there a little bit, that's one thing that this offense has gotten away from over the years. We've talked about excited to see some of these straight pulls, of these guards and all. How about some of these pin and pulls now, where the guard on the same side or the center pulls out? And you block down, because I think there's one thing too that kind of sticks out. Don't want to get too deep into the tape just yet, but I think Green Bay is a team that if you scheme it up right, can be run on the edges, especially with these young corners out there.
Yeah, I think the corners play a factor in that. Although, again, we'll kind of I don't want to give away the whole discussion on the run defense, but I thought to run on Green Bay, you run inside. I thought their edge defense in the couple of games that I watched recently, at least, was pretty effective overall. But we'll see what the Steelers' game plan is, because do you want to add more layers to it when you felt like a focused run game is what kind of led to some of your success, or do you want to try to start building off that? It could go either way. So I'm not sure what they're going to do in this game, but I would expect probably some more pulling of some respect, whether those are, Broderick Jones on those start schemes or kind of more of those wham and full blocks. We'll see what they do.
All right.
That's probably it, though, from Canada overall. From Teryl Austin, usually not a lot there, but a lot of commentary about that inside linebacker room. And just kind of off the top, I know it was sort of an obvious comment, but I think it's good to get this on record. He was asked about, can Nick Herbig potentially be an option inside, given the injuries to the position? And he pretty much dismissed that immediately. I think almost was surprised by the question and said, oh, no, Nick, no, he's an outside guy, not even in emergency. So just because it has been mentioned a couple times out there since Holcomb went down, Herbig is not going to be an option at inside linebacker.
Yeah, look, and we've talked about this, after initially talking about wondering if he might be an inside guy coming out of the draft. I mean, he's done everything that you would like to see in a young, developing edge rusher, and even one undersized in some of the measurables aspect of it. He's really done well on the outside. So there's no reason to all of a sudden move him from that, put more on his plate, and have him do things he has not done yet. In especially in this defense, and I mean, there's no reason to think right now at this point that he'll ever move inside. He's probably locked in at edge for the rest of the time now.
Sure. In terms of guys that obviously could step up, Mark Robinson was mentioned, and Austin spoke well of Robinson and about kind of his growth and development. I know it goes back to those comments that I believe he referenced on Monday or Friday, whenever it was, about Austin before the year began, or early in the season, whenever that was, about Robinson, probably more of a 2024 guy in terms of starting. But, injuries are going to change the equation, and you would expect Roberts to, obviously, if Roberts is out, then Robinson's going to play a heavy amount of snaps. And if Roberts does play, then I imagine he might be limited, and maybe there's an opportunity to carve out a role for Mark Robinson.
Yeah, we'll have to see what that looks like, and obviously the injury status of Elandon Roberts will play a lot into that come this weekend as well too. So yeah, I expect to see him on the field. It's just how much. We're talking 5 snaps. Are we talking? Obviously probably be a lot more than that if Elandon Roberts doesn't play. But if Elandon Roberts is deemed to go, even if he is deemed to go with that knee, will there be some situations where maybe Mark Robinson can get a few snaps in there? So he's definitely going to be, you would think, the next man up, in the rotation there. So it will be interesting to see, especially with the health of Roberts coming into play for this one.
Right. I think Robinson, as you said, will play to some degree. The question is it going to be 10 snaps or 30 snaps or 50 snaps? We'll just have to wait and see. But the quote from Austin on Robinson was, quote, "I feel confident in Mark in giving us some of the reps that we want. Mark is a great kid, great guy, tough. So I feel confident Mark will have an opportunity to get in the game and have an impact on the game," end quote. So we'll see what the snap counts look like exiting Sunday's game.
I mean, you never know. You start a season, you never know how injuries are going to impact things, and then all of a sudden, how a guy that they talked about ahead of the season, looking more towards 2024, could end up getting legitimate, meaningful snaps in this thing. So you can bet we'll be charting that one.
Yep, for sure. Austin also talking about the long-term arc of Joey Porter Jr., that hopefully he can be a guy that shadows receivers. Didn't obviously commit to him necessarily doing that this week, although I don't know if Green Bay has the guy that is so obvious to shadow the way that Tennessee does, the way that maybe future opponents of Amari Cooper and Jamar Chase do. But that is the goal, is to have that top-tier, lockdown, shutdown cornerback, and the hope is Porter can be that guy.
Yeah, and as far as like we had said on the show the other day there, you know that you can use him as a traveler now if you need to. I'm not so sure that what the Packers present on the other side of football will call for such a situation, but there might be a time or two where he follows a receiver over, to another side, depending on down distance situations, something like that. They know that they can do that now. In situations moving forward, I just don't think we're going to see a lot of it, at least not in this next game against the Packers.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Now, are there other components? Mike Tomlin on Tuesday talked about that it wasn't just a D-Hop discussion, but it was about trying to minimize some of the tackling responsibilities for Porter. I don't know what the book is on Green Bay in that regard. but I don't know if that's going to really affect things too much. I think, while Tomlin did mention that, it's probably true. I think the overall goal was let's put Porter on D-Hop because that's the matchup we like the most.
Right, I agree.
Let's see. Teryl Austin also excited about Darius Rush and his impact. Assuming that Minkah Fitzpatrick does not play this week, then I imagine that Rush will continue to work in dime packages. And so it's a good chance for Rush to get a lot of exposure because once Fitzpatrick comes back, Rush may not get a helmet and obviously may not be playing.
Yeah, who had Rush with 30 snaps on their bingo card in that last game? And look, you get a young cornerback like that, able to get him some snaps, and it's a rare occurrence, especially with some guy that with a young kid that had yet to play any in an NFL game outside of what he played back in preseason. He only played 2 preseason games and something like, what did we say, 47
snaps, something like that.
40 something snaps, and overall they were uneventful snaps other than him giving up 2 touchdowns. In that. So it's not like you learned a lot from his tape in the preseason. I didn't feel like, so you still were basically working off of the college tape with him. But to be able to get a young kid like that and get him integrated into defense that quick, and then on the field for the volume of snaps that he played at Tennessee or against Tennessee, and then we'll see how many he gets, gives you a good measuring stick with him, even though he, as you mentioned, once Minkah comes back, you have to wonder if he might be the odd man out back to the inactive list. But, it does feel like he's going to get some complement of snaps here this Sunday against the Packers.
And they moved him around. He was playing some slot corner. He was playing some kind of dime type role. He played free safety in that final drive. That's where he should have had and almost had that interception. Even I think a rep at left cornerback in a red zone situation. So while his packages were limited to dime, which takes some off your plate, he was doing more than just, okay, you line up here and you do this. I mean, they really moved his role around quite a bit in that game.
Well, yeah, and that was surprising on top of the amount of volume of snaps.
Mm-hmm. Should just mention, because I thought it was a good and worthwhile question, just somebody asking about Corey Trice and how he's doing, of course, out for the year with that knee injury reported to be a torn ACL, but Teryl Austin said that Trice is doing well. He's in all the meetings. He's around the guys. And that's so important, Dave, because we hear the stories from guys that get hurt. They're out for the season. They're kind of removed from the team. They focus on their rehab. They're not really in that building with the guys as much. And for a rookie, I think it's crucial to still be engaged and be at practice and be visible so you don't kind of get forgotten about and you stay engaged and get those mental reps in. So the injury was obviously devastating and terrible for Trice, but I'm glad that he's still around, still working and getting healthier.
Yeah, if there's any good to come out of the injury that he had, it's when he had it, and the time factor that you would think that he would be up and ready to go come OTAs next year.
Yeah, that's going to be the hope there. And obviously the injury history is concerning, but he has bounced back from these things before. So he knows the road. It's tough as it is. He knows how to come back, and hopefully he's mentally there to handle that. And I think he is.
All
right. I think it's everything from the coordinators, anything from the players this week. Kenny Pickett spoke. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I think the story's been talked about as much as it can be talked about, but George Pickens did speak with the media on Wednesday. He didn't say much. He talked about he wasn't frustrated. The social media stuff had nothing to do with the game, nothing related to football. I don't believe that for a second, but I'm okay with everything that he said because it didn't make it a story. There's no headline to come out of it. There was no revival of this story, generally speaking. And so I don't really believe his answers. I'm good with it. I'm ready to squash this story and get to Sunday's game.
I think the biggest thing is him speaking on Wednesday and getting that out of the way. We could sit here and dive into, what he said, what he didn't say, but at this point, they're ready. The big thing is, can they move past this now? And once again, I think it's key that they got him out there. And I don't know if that was by design. Maybe it was. Young player, let's get this addressed early in the week so we can start focusing on the Packers here. And the best thing that he can do right now, because look, Merrill Hodge blasted him too. On DVE, what was that, Thursday, I think, Wednesday or Thursday morning, one of the two there. So there's enough, negative out there concerning him since this last game. the best thing that he can do is go out against the Packers and have a strong game. And if he does, then all the focus will be on him playing a large part in beating the Packers.
Do you think Pittsburgh's game plan is going to be one of those, let's get Pickens the ball early and often to try to get him involved? Do you think there's going to be a special effort made for that?
I wouldn't force it, but I would tell you this as part of the scripting. If things line up right, I wouldn't mind giving him a quick wide receiver screen on the first play of the game to get the ball in his hands and get him moving. So I'm not obviously going to try to force something that's not there, but could you put a couple of RPOs in the first 15 and him run one of the some sort of a wide receiver screen in that, or an end around or something like that, just to get the ball in his hands early? I don't think that would be a bad idea, just to get his mind, get him entrenched in the game early.
Yeah, I think they're going to do something early, and I think they're going to try to get him involved with a real clear effort. As you said, you can't force it. You're not going to risk the victory just to get Pickens a couple of touches. But I think the first favorable matchup that Kenny Pickett gets, where you're getting single high, you're getting cover one, man coverage type stuff, you're going to see the back shoulder throw or the deep ball to George Pickens to let him try to make a play as early as possible.
And look, once again, depending on what happens with this Packers secondary and the way they play things, there's probably going to be a few opportunities for some back shoulder stuff in this game and some out routes, and then maybe occasional, if you get those corners up, to take some deep shots in there. So I would expect George Pickens to come out of this game with six or more targets.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a pretty safe bet there, and hopefully he can be productive with them. Just one other quick thing to mention here that just came across on the Friday morning here, Dave. According to Jerry Dulac, has a little bit of color and commentary on Chukwuma Okorafor, and I've not read the entire thing, but apparently Okorafor's issue and the reason for his benching was him expressing dissatisfaction with the same running plays being ran against Jacksonville, and that's apparently the reason why Okorafor was upset and the reason why he got benched.
Well, whatever the reason was, it's going to take something for him to get back in there, probably an injury at this point, because it does feel like the toothpaste is finally out of the tube, as we like to say here. And, barring an injury and with Dan Moore, primarily best suited to play the left tackle spot, we might see Okorafor come in for some tackle eligible type stuff, Yeah,
we saw that one snap, I think, against Tennessee.
Yeah. But other than that, he's going to have to bide his time for whatever he did or didn't say or do.
Just to read the quote here from Dulac, quote, Okorafor was upset the offense was using the same plays despite trailing the entire game, including 17-3 in the third quarter. It is unclear to whom Okorafor directly vented his anger and what else might have been said or done, end quote. So if the bar to getting benched is being upset about the same plays, every Steelers fan, I think, will be benched for yelling at their television for half the season.
Yep.
All right, Dave, I think that probably covers the coordinators, the coaches, and the players pretty well. Let's take a pause and come back with a Packers beat writer who's been covering the beat for Green Bay for a long, long time. That is Tom Silverstein. He works for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, also has a podcast, Green 19 podcast, and has an X's and O's series with Roy Butler that he'll talk about. So we'll come back in a moment and talk with Tom.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. As usual for the Friday shows, we have on a beat writer who covers the opposition. And this week's opposition for the Pittsburgh Steelers is the Green Bay Packers. And it's been a little while since we've had him on. Obviously, the Steelers and the Packers don't meet very often, but they did a couple years ago. And when that happened, we had Tom Silverstein on. Tom covers the Packers and has for a long time for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and you can read his work online at jsonline.com. And you should already be following Tom on Twitter/X. If not, you can find him at Tom Silverstein, and that's SILVERSTEIN. So with that, Tom, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Thanks. You promote me better than my own paper does, That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Look, we try. And look, we're real gracious of your time, and you were absolutely fantastic last time we had you on a couple years ago. And obviously, a lot has changed since then for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, out the door and over to the New York Jets now. And Jordan Love is now at quarterback. Obviously, he was on the roster, I think, back then when last time we talked to you. So let's start with Jordan Love, Tom. And, him and Kenny Pickett Kenny Pickett has more games, I think, underneath his belt right now than Jordan Love does by a couple and all. But obviously, you've gotten a long look at Jordan Love and have covered him for all this time. What are your overarching thoughts? I usually like to say you get a good read on a quarterback after about 20 games or so if he makes it that long starting out here. And Jordan Love obviously coming up on that number. But what's your overarching thoughts on Love right now? Is he ahead of where you thought maybe he would be? Is he behind? What's the 4-1-1 on him?
Yeah, I think he's a little behind where I thought he would be, mainly because he's different than Kenny Pickett is in his second year. Jordan Love is in his fourth year, So he should be farther ahead than he is. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers. He learned from him. Now, he came from a system that wasn't very NFL friendly. And he played on a really bad team his senior year. But he's just not quite put it together yet. And the thing is, you can see he has the arm talent. You can see he has the personality, the just calmness about him that he's not bothered by a lot of things. He's a good athlete. He's not great athlete, but he's a good one, and he has a really good arm. But he's just been kind of off on everything. And you keep waiting. Okay, when is he going to be a little bit more accurate? When is he going to start hitting these deep balls that he keeps missing on? And so far through 8 games, he hasn't.
You look at overall, especially these last 2 games, it sticks out on the all 22. And if you go look and research, I think throughout the whole year, they're running a lot of RPOs for him. Is that something that you kind of expected? Is it something to kind of just make his decision making quicker there? Because you're right. I mean, him and Kenny Pickett both, the accuracy right now, completion percentage, both those two are way down in the league where it comes to accuracy and all. And then obviously, as you mentioned, Jordan Love not hitting a high percentage of the deep balls. Is RPO? Why do you reckon they're using so many RPOs?
Well, I'm not sure that they are. I think that what they're doing is giving him 2 options. He can a play or he can carry it out. And it's very different than what they were doing with Aaron Rodgers, where, Aaron Rodgers could call a play from 2011 if he wanted. His receivers, usually his receivers knew these plays that he had run before, especially with Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb, who are both gone now. I think they've kind of had the wraps on Jordan Love, and I think they're going to have to sort of give him a little bit more ownership of the offense because he's going through his progressions. He's holding the ball. He's not really going to his checkdowns enough. And they have to figure out a way where they can get him in the best play possible. And I think that's been part of the issue is that he's, sometimes he's just thrown into cover 2 all day. And they're having trouble getting the ball down the field and making some really big plays. Now, it really helps when they have Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was hurt, and Aaron Jones is the heart of their offense. So they've played a little bit better since he's been back, but there's still a lot of things just missing.
But before I turn this over to Alex for a couple of questions, I've followed you a long time, and you've obviously covered this team for a long time. So I'm going to ask a pretty blunt question. I think you'll give me a direct answer here. If given your choice right now, with what you know about Kenny Pickett and what you've seen out of Jordan Love, if you had to pick one of those two quarterbacks to move forward with for the next, let's say, 2 years, which one would you choose, Tom?
Well, I would choose Love on potential, but what I like about Pickett is him in the fourth quarter, and that's what Jordan Love has been missing. Is he starts to make some comebacks and things like that, but he's a late starter, but he hasn't finished. They've been in a bunch of games, and he's had the ball with a chance to win it, and has only done it once. So it's kind of, I always lean towards, like athleticism and big arm, like you can do something with that. But I also, I think there's something when a guy can win with, fourth quarter play. I think that's pretty important too. So I'm kind of dodging your question because I don't really know. I don't feel like I know enough about Pickett, but I don't feel like I know enough about Love either.
Fair enough.
It's an artful dodge, Tom. We respect it. My big impression with this Packers offense is how young they are. It's kind of like Pittsburgh last year. All these receivers, skill guys, they're 24 years old or younger. Who are the leaders for this offense? I'm sure Love has a component to that. I know David Bakhtiari's there, but he's been hurt so much. Who are the leaders for this Packers offense right now?
Really, it's just Aaron Jones. I mean, he is the guy. So, of their wide receivers, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs are in their second year. Everybody else is a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Of their tight ends, Josiah DeGuara, he's more like a fullback, and the other three tight ends are all rookies. Their left tackle currently is a second-year guy. Their right tackle is a second-year guy. The interior of the offensive line is a little more veteran, but it's not like having, a guy like Bakhtiari who was a 10-year guy, and he only played one game. He played the first game, and then he's been done, and he's done for the season. So they've greatly missed him, and I honestly think they'd be a heck of a lot better team with him because Love would have been protected a lot better. They could have slid all their, with Bakhtiari, you can just say, hey, go take so-and-so, and then the rest of the guys can do whatever they have to do with the other three rushers or four rushers. So Aaron Jones is the heart and soul of the team, and they seem to go as he goes, but he's also been banged up and injured his hamstring in the first game. And just now, I think last week was the first time he was 100%, and should be 100% going into this game. And I look for them to use him a lot.
I want to ask you about the offensive line, two guys in particular, Elton Jenkins and Zach Tom. Those guys have moved around a bunch. I think Jenkins has played all 5 spots in his career. I think he settled in at left guard this year. But what has allowed those guys to be able to move around seemingly so seamlessly? I know injuries have kind of forced their hand, but just talk about Jenkins and Tom being able to kind of be some chess pieces over their careers.
Yeah, they're similar guys. So both guys coming in, a lot of scouts pegged them as centers. Elton Jenkins had played center at Mississippi State and some guard. Tom had played center and some left tackle. And, the Packers got him in. And Jenkins, I mean, he from the start, you could tell that he was a special talent. And they used him everywhere. And then he tore his ACL. And so last year was a little bit of coming back from that. And this year he tore his MCL. And he's a really fast healer, but he's not quite back to, I would say, 100% yet. But when he and Bakhtiari were there, they were a force on the left side. They didn't have to worry about much on the left side, and that's changed. So I would say Tom is it. at right tackle because Josh Myers is their center, and he's a second-round pick, and he's starting to play like they thought he would. He had been kind of up and down. So Tom is really in a spot that's open. And I would guess that at some point they'll draft a right tackle and maybe move him inside because he's not the biggest guy. And he's very mobile. So I could see them moving him inside next year, maybe when Runyon leaves in free agency.
Tom, before we get talking about defensive side of football, kind of lengthy injury report for the Packers this week, and kind of headlining that is Jaire Alexander. And I heard Matt LaFleur talk about him today. It doesn't sound great for Jaire this weekend. We also saw last week Kenny Clark find defensive lineman of theirs get carted off, but I think he talked to the media today. I don't know the status on him. Who's looking like they're going to miss this game? And I know it's still early here, but looking into your crystal ball, who looks like they might not go this week?
I would say Jaire Alexander's at the top of the list. I was surprised about that because he played through the entire game and had probably his best game of the year. And then all of a sudden we find out he's got a shoulder injury, which was a problem for him 2 years ago. And he missed a big chunk of the season because of a separated shoulder. I don't know if it's that bad, but he hasn't been able to practice. And I would expect he's out. I would also expect that Quay Walker, their inside linebacker, one of their really up-and-coming defensive players, I mean, really good athletic player, he's probably not going to play. I would guess that Yash Nyman, who has been might start at left tackle, and John Runyon, they both returned to practice today, so I think they'll probably play. I don't think Josh Myers' injury was all that serious. I think Alexander and Walker are the two guys that are most likely to miss the game.
All right, so you think Kenny Clark should be good to go then?
Kenny Clark, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about Kenny Clark. Yeah, he should be good. He practiced. I think he may have to wear a harness or something on his shoulder, but he's a pretty tough guy, and I expect him to play.
Two young guys on that defense. We because of the Steelers' needs and all, we obviously looked at them quite a bit. The Steelers had a lot of interest, it seemed like, in Carl Brooks out of Bowling Green, and he sticks out on tape. Boy, he's batting down a lot of passes. He looks as advertised. And Lucas Van Ness is another one that was kind of a tweener, and you're wondering, is this guy going to be an edge? Is he going to be an interior lineman? But it looks like they're using him on like some early down type situations. Mm-hmm. And then they're bringing in Rashawn Gary, not playing a full complement of snaps, but he's definitely out there when it's time to rush the passer. Talk about Carl Brooks and Lucas Van Ness and their progression so far.
Yeah, Brooks has been kind of a marvel. They drafted him because they knew he was a pass rusher, got him in the 4th round. And they didn't necessarily know how he would play the run, but they just felt like he was a guy who could get after the quarterback, and that's been true. He's one of their leaders in pressures. He's an up the field guy, and he's pretty turned out to be a little better against the run than they thought he was. They typically will go with Kenny Clark in their nickel. They'll go with Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton on early downs, and Slayton has been really an emerging guy for them. Big, strong, 330-pound guy who's terrific athlete. They use him on field goal block because he can jump so high. Those two guys, and then they have Devontae Wyatt, the first-round pick from last year from Georgia. And then they have Van Ness, and what they've decided is that they want to save, Rashawn Gary's coming off an ACL from last year, and they want to save him for pass rushing. And he's back to himself as a pass rusher, but they don't want to wear him out on early downs. So they've been using Van Ness and Kingsley Enagbare. They kind of rotate them, those two, and take Preston Smith and Gary out. But Gary will always be in on passing downs, and he's their big threat. I would say Van Ness is still learning how to pass rush. That's a big part of it. He's a hustle guy. He'll just get after it, but he's not real slick with his moves. And he's been pretty decent against the run.
Another young guy, before I turned over to Alex, that I scouted quite a bit because I thought the Steelers, they did have interest in him, I think, to some degree. Anthony Johnson, the kid out of Iowa State, and finally saw him on the field, I think, due to injuries and playing mostly free safety for the Packers against the Rams there. Is he expected to continue that role this week against the Steelers? And what has Anthony Johnson shown you?
So, their safety position wasn't that great going into this year, and then they've had injuries. So Darnell Savage, their veteran guy, is on
another guy we like. we knew the Steelers liked him coming out. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, he's been a big disappointment, really. He was not been the playmaker they had hoped, and he was benched last year, but he was having a better year this year. He's kind of just a little bit got his game together, and then he's been hurt his calf. So Anthony Johnson came in last week and started because Rudy Ford, their other safety, got hurt, and he was pretty solid. But they also really kind of dumbed down his assignments, knowing he was a rookie, and that they didn't like float the safeties back and forth and make, the Rams try to guess who was going to be up and who wasn't. Jonathan Owens would come up in the box and Anthony Johnson would stay back. And it worked out fine. There was nothing wrong with what he did. He had an interception that Jaire Alexander really caused. But he's a promising young guy. I just don't know. I kind of got the feeling from Joe Barry today that they're going to go back to Rudy Ford and Jonathan Owens just for the experience factor. But, we were talking about it on our podcast, and we were in agreement that they ought to just go with Anthony Johnson. I mean, what are they trying to accomplish this year? They're not going to the playoffs. They're not going to the Super Bowl. They might as well keep working on some of these young guys.
At cornerback, Tom, if Alexander does not play, who are going to be their outside corners? Valentine seems to be. Is Rochelle going to have to step in? I kind of get this from my point of view at Josh Dobbs. Who are these guys learning names on the fly situation? What's the Packers cornerback situation looking like?
Yeah, it's going to be CV and CB, they call them. So Carrington Valentine is a 7th round pick that they really like. And then Corey Valentine, who is a guy they've just kind of worked through undrafted free agency in the practice squad. And he's an okay player, but he's not Jaire. He's not Rasul Douglas, who they just traded away too. Sure. If I'm George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, I'm licking my chops going into this game. Two really young players. Valentine was the surprise of training camp, and he, when Alexander kind of came back and started playing regularly, and then they had Douglas and they have Keyshawn Nixon in the slot, he didn't really play much. Then Alexander got hurt. He played against Denver, and Cortland Sutton just ate him up, just really destroyed him. And then he came back this last game, and it was like he had really learned a lesson on that. Like, he bounced back. He was way more aggressive. They put him on Kupp. If Kupp lined up in front of him, they didn't move Jaire Alexander over there. They just kept him in the same spot. He broke up 3 passes. He's really fast, has really long arms. I expect the Steelers are going to try to double move him some because he really played aggressively against the Rams. And if he tries to do that, I'm sure they will work him. But he can.
We lost you, Tom.
Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Yep, got you back.
I don't know what happened. It said that I was muted. Okay. Anyway, I guess I was just talking about Valentine. He's got really long arms, really fast, and so we'll see how aggressive he plays against those guys.
Sure, and I can expect Pittsburgh to target the outside. Johnson Pickens that's where the passing offense flows through. A couple more questions for you, Tom. Then let Dave finish things out. Joe Barry seems to get a lot of criticism, the D coordinator for Green Bay. I believe him and Matt Canada have the honor and the privilege of having fans create petitions to fire them. What is the chief concern with Barry, and how valid is their frustration?
It's funny you mentioned that, because on the podcast, we were like, who's going to be the first to be, demanded to be fired in this game, and like, these guys are going to have like a get fired battle on Twitter.
Both trending, I'm sure.
Yeah. Barry's problem has been, so he's tried to incorporate the defense that Brandon Staley brought to the Rams. So it's a very good defense when it's played right and played by the right players, and it's an offshoot of Vic Fangio's defense. But I don't think he has the play. He has trouble calling the right plays for the right teams. And I think he sometimes tries to peg players into the system instead of changing the system for the players. And I think that's been the biggest criticism. That, and they haven't been able to stop the run. They are a team built for stopping the deep ball. They don't give up deep balls very often, but they've had a lot of trouble stopping the run, and they shouldn't, with the linebackers they have and the defensive linemen. They've done better this year. He started to play more 8 men in the box, which was something he almost never did. And he's blitzing a little more. So they've been a little better, but, they just played, a guy who got cut the next day after the game, So they haven't faced a lot of good quarterbacks, and I'll be interested to see how they go after Pickett and what they do. If they just sit back and dare him to throw it, or if they actually bring some heat on him.
My last question for you, Tom, then Dave will finish things out. Give me a good Rich Bisaccia story. You have anything good to scratch my special teams itch over here?
He is an interesting dude. It's been kind of a pleasure to cover him. He's kind of an ornery dude, and but he's got a lot of experience. And he and Mike Tomlin were very close from their days in Tampa. And I think he's the thing I like about him is that he's like no nonsense. And so he continually has this battle with Keyshawn Nixon, who's their kick returner. And he was an all-pro last year, the first time the Packers have ever had a kick returner be an all-pro. But he has this knack for returning balls that are kicked 9 yards deep in the end zone. And it just drives Bisaccia nuts. And they kind of had this back and forth. And they're really excited about November because now all the kickoffs are going out of the end zone. So that's something to watch on Sunday is, how do the Steelers handle Keyshawn Nixon? Can they kick it out of the end zone? Or if they can't, what is their plan? Because he's really explosive on kickoff returns.
I don't watch, obviously, a lot of Packer press conferences, but have been following the Matt LaFleur and the coordinator ones and all those ones this week. And I don't remember Matt LaFleur being so standoffish. Or I think I was telling Alex about that. He just has some. Have you picked? I mean, you've obviously followed him the whole time here. Has his demeanor changed any since the last time these two teams squared off? And is he on the hot seat, Tom?
Well, I don't know if you watched today.
I did watch. I did watch today.
Yeah, it turned out I was wondering about it too. So I went and asked the PR guy. I'm like, is he really mad at something? And he's like, no, he's sick. And
Okay.
he was like in a really bad mood about being sick. So, because I wondered the same thing. I mean, he's been a lot better than that,
Okay.
than he was today. But I would say, I think, I think he thought the season would be better. And, I think there was some thought around here, though no one will say it publicly, that, they were glad that they didn't have to do everything Aaron Rodgers wanted to do. I mean, he ran this place. And I think they felt like, okay, now we're going to really use our system and succeed. And it's been a flop. The offense is not supposed to be the weak point of this team. You got an offensive coach. That's what he's brought in for. And so I think that's been really frustrating. And if they don't do something, if they don't find some kind of a groove towards the end of the year, I don't think LaFleur's in trouble, but I think he's going to be forced to make some changes on his staff. That's for sure.
All right. I don't know if you do predictions or not, Tom. I can't remember. I know this won't air until Friday afternoon, obviously. Yeah. If you want to throw out a prediction, I don't know, something like 5-4 in this one.
I'll take the under on that.
Hey, I have covered, let's see, what would have been some scores? 1917, I think it was, 20-3. I mean, just some brutal games. I mean, the Denver game was brutal. The Saints game was brutal. The Raiders game, it's hard football to watch. I was really leaning. I told people on our podcast, I'm like, I'm really close to picking a Steelers blowout. I just don't have a lot of faith that these guys are going to come into Pittsburgh and, regardless of how Pittsburgh's playing offense, I just don't see them moving the ball much against the defense. Good luck blocking TJ Watt, and Singleton looks like he's playing really well. And I've always liked Keanu Benton, he was up here at Wisconsin.
Right.
And I mean, they seem to have a lot of Wisconsin guys there.
Do.
Herbert too, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of faith in their offense, and I kind of think Pittsburgh will wear them down and probably win pretty big.
All right. Tell people what you got going on over at JS Online, Tom.
Yeah, so we have a podcast called the Green 19 Podcast. That's the name is based on how Aaron Rodgers used to say Green 19 before, and they still do that before every snap. I also do a video series that'll be out tomorrow with former Packers Hall of Fame safety Leroy Butler, and we do an X's and O's segment. I'll probably have him look at a couple of Steelers plays. So that would be, you might want to check in on that. It's called X's and O's with Leroy Butler, and it's a video series on JS Online. So people may want to tune into that.
All right, great. And we'll put all this links to your Twitter and the website in the podcast post and all. And Tom, we certainly, we don't know the next time. It might be 4 years, I guess. I don't know if you put in a lot of time over there, so I don't know if you'll still be there. But if you are, you're more than welcome to come back on the show, because you're a joy to talk to, and appreciate all the years of knowledge that you have of the team.
Well, 13 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl. Who knows? History could repeat itself this year. You never know. It's a crazy league. I'm just kidding.
Well, Tom, once again, thanks for joining Dave and Alex on the Terrible Podcast.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Tom Silverstein. You can follow him on Twitter. I forgot to plug his Twitter before the interview there. You can follow him at Tom Silverstein. That's Silver, Stein. He covers the Packers for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Check out the podcast, the Green 19 podcast. Dave, should we change our podcast name to the Blue 80 podcast? I guess I think we have to do that now.
I tell you, anytime there's that meme that runs around with him that asked, "Did you with the Blue 80 and when you read it, did you read it in Ben's voice?" And yes, yeah, you can't see the word Blue 80 and not in a meme or in a quote and not hear Ben Roethlisberger saying that, along with the dilly, right. Against the Titans several years ago. So
what we ever find out what Blue 80 actually meant, because it was just used all the time. It couldn't have been. Was it almost just a crutch? Or was that just go on next sound? I wonder what that actually meant.
Didn't he describe that one time?
Did he?
I've done this so long now that some things you don't file away to take.
Because it's just one of those things where, because it was so, he used it on almost every cadence that it couldn't have meant something huge, because defenses would pick up on it unless there was some dummy calls or something with it. But I don't know if I ever actually found out what Blue 80 meant, or if it meant something different at different times, or again, dummy calls. I just don't know the story there.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look on the site and do a search. I can't remember. I thought he addressed it at one time. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Something I should have mentioned coming out of the Titans game, and I saw this get picked up on a couple of websites from the tweet that you had, but there was that play call the Steelers called in that Titans game that you could hear the actual call and kind of the background. It got picked up by the Amazon mics, and that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to hear the call, though.
Right. And I understand maybe why they don't do it, but I've said in the past, man, I would like a whole game of the boom mic out there and hear some of the conversations that go on. Okay, there have been some funny ones over the years with Roethlisberger and Pouncey and Fernando Velasco. Gotta go, Nando. Gotta go. Some of those conversations I bet are good. I would pay for a full game audio of nothing but the boom mic to hear what goes on. Pre-snap, post-snap, during snap, whatever.
My favorite ever kind of hot mic moment, and I'm going to censor myself here, but people who know, and those who don't can look it up. The time that Peyton Manning was very upset at Donald Brown for missing a pass protection. You ever see that clip before off the snap, Dave? He was with the Colts.
I believe so.
Okay, yeah, very upset. I'll put it that way. But that's my favorite ever. Just kind of funny moment in the middle of a play there from Peyton Manning.
All right. And shout out to Tom again as well, too, taking time because obviously he's got to cover the Steelers this week and get on the road and go to Pittsburgh to cover a game. And you're talking about a veteran guy that's done this for a long time. He's really been cordial. It's not like we talk to him every season, but fun guy to talk to.
Yeah, great information there. So again, be sure to follow him on Twitter, Tom Silverstein, and check out his work at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. All right, Dave, let's you and I predict and preview this game. We'll do a prediction later, but previewing this game right now. Let's start with the Packers offense. And as I mentioned to Tom, my biggest overall takeaway of Green Bay is just how youthful they are. There are not a lot of veterans on this offense. He mentioned Aaron Jones, but the skill guys in terms of the receivers, the tight ends, first-year guys, second-year guys. Jordan Love is older, but his first full year starting. I think you're kind of seeing some of the growing pains from this offense because they just are a really young type of unit.
Yeah, really rebuilt now post Aaron Rodgers, and obviously you don't have that veteran tackle of theirs in.
Yep, I got you.
Still hearing me? Okay. Okay, it says low resources here. Obviously, rebuilt this thing. You got a lot of young players, as you mentioned there, especially in the receiving core. Christian Watson, a guy that all three of these wide receivers, we scouted heavily on the site and all during their pre-draft processes there. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs out of Nevada, Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. So feel like those guys fairly well just coming out not too far removed from college, but not having a veteran guy like David Bakhtiari at tackle has forced them to do some things there. You got a guy in Zach Tom, who I think's played pretty well overall at the right tackle position from the little that I've watched there. John Runyon, I like John Runyon coming out of out of college. I really did, but I don't think he's playing as well as maybe I thought maybe he would at the NFL level, at least not in a couple of games that I watched there. They've had some shifting there at left guard between who is it, Sean Ryan and Elton Jenkins is going to be. I think Jenkins is probably going to start over there. And then just this last week, they had a little injury there with Josh Neiman, and who had to come in for him? Was it Rasheed Walker?
I believe so. Yeah, the second year man out of Penn State. Right.
So the only thing they've got going for them really is a couple of veteran running backs there in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And obviously Jordan Love's been around a little while, but, he hasn't started. He's started a few fewer games than Kenny Pickett has at this point. They're still trying to learn about him. It was a great question that you asked about who's the leader on this offense right now, because it is obviously Jordan Love's team, but Aaron Jones, even their tight ends have some youth to them.
Yeah, rookie tight end.
Yeah, it feels like they're still trying to find their way. And look, you look at them on tape, and you see some of the growing pains that the Steelers have gone through here overall, especially with them trying to get more consistent and find out what their identity is overall. And they haven't had Aaron Jones for some time because of injury. They Christian Watson's missed, I think, a little bit of time in there as well too. So this is an offense right now at the middle point of the 2023 season that they've got some pieces back now, but they're trying to figure out who they are, what they're trying to accomplish identity wise. They haven't been able to push the football down the field deep, not without trying. Jordan Love is taken quite a few deep shots so far this season. His completion percentage overall, though, hasn't been great in other throws of it. Him and Kenny Pickett's completion percentage ranked down there at the bottom of the league right now. And that's obviously a bit concerning when you're talking about a young quarterback at this point here. It doesn't, when you look at the passing charts overall, especially in the last 4 games, when it comes to Jordan Love, not a lot of action going on in the middle of the field, especially between, say, the 6 and 15 yard area there. A lot of stuff spread out to the side of the field, as much as what you would see in a Kenny Pickett passing chart. They're not afraid to use they run a lot of RPOs, man, or at least in the I think overall, and specifically in the last 2 games. What did I tell you that they have run here?
You said 25 RPOs.
Yeah.
I think you saw a lot against the Rams. I saw fewer against Minnesota, but still, or maybe I had that backwards. I saw a lot against the Vikings. I saw fewer against the Rams, but still some.
Yeah, and I think you got it right. I think a lot against the Rams, but some against the a lot against the Vikings, and a handful, a little bit less against the Rams there. I'm looking at some charting right now. 75 RPOs run through, what's their record? Right now?
3-5 through 8 games.
Okay, so they played 8 games. 16%. Total usage in that. The usage rank is 8th overall. So it slants more to heavier within that. So you're going to see some RPOs for them. They have had some miscommunication problems. I think specifically, you look at that. I think it was the second play from scrimmage against Minnesota. There was some miscommunication on an RPO there, and Jordan Love had to end up scrambling out with it, and he ended up completing the ball down the right sideline on that play, but they had an ineligible man. That's the thing about it should be its own reality TV series when RPOs go bad. And that's the thing about an RPO. It's got to be timed up perfectly about what you're going to do, because there's no time to hold the football because the offensive linemen are trying to get down the field. But rest assured, we're going to see some RPOs out of this Packer offense in this game. It's just a matter of how much.
Sure. That happened to Pittsburgh against Tennessee on that first drive. The receivers never looked for the ball. They didn't realize there was a pass component to that play, and Pickett got in trouble, had to chuck it, and they got called for an eligible man downfield. So you kind of see some parallels here for the offenses, as Pittsburgh was pretty RPO heavy against Tennessee. We'll see if that continues. But yeah, I think they want to have that college feel, give Love some options, use his mobility to some degree, some play action, kind of changing the launch point. He's been sacked a lot the last couple of games, but I think obviously they want to run the ball. That's going to be their mission. They got a couple of talented backs in Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. They even use both of them on the field at the same time occasionally for split back sets and pony looks and different types of jets and motions. And Jones is a pretty versatile type of dude. So that run game is pretty varied. There's some inside zone. There's some Zorro toss.
Outside zone. They try to run a little bit. Yeah,
they mix it up. So how do you handle the run game, the different looks? They're a heavier personnel team. They're in a lot of 12 personnel, a couple tight ends, got an H-back in there in Deguaya. So I think just trying to handle that up front is going to be key to start things.
When you look at their usage of 12 personnel, looks like 30% for the season. That's ranked 4th overall. So they will, and primarily you'll see that one of the tight ends line up in the backfield when they do use them, but they will put both on the at the ends of the line of scrimmage or stack them together within that. They 64% zone run percentage, 33% gap run percentage within there. Believe it or not, their design rollout. What would you guess their design rollout percentage is?
I mean, just 10% maybe.
3%.
That is lower than I thought it'd be.
9 snaps. That kind of surprised me when you've got a guy as mobile as Jordan Love is there. So not a lot of heavy usage so far when it comes to design rollouts with him.
That is interesting, but a guy that certainly can make some plays with his legs, and a lot of maybe out of structure, nothing there type of stuff. So you're always trying to adjusting your rush to wanting to rush, wanting to get home. Love has been sacked quite a bit, but also not letting him break contain, and how much zone versus man do you play on third down. Those are all kind of things you have to think about right now.
I tell you that Jaden Reed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jaden Reed.
One thing that you see kind of early in that game against the Rams, there is some of that quick motion from him outside, but not with him or cheat motion. Not with him going across the full formation. He'll start off the outside and then motion at the snap of the football, be motioning more into the slot role and then just running across the field. And they did that against the Rams. And that's something that you could see something here, especially if the Steelers are going to play a lot of zone in this. Gets him on the move at the snap of the football, and Jordan Love hit him right in stride for a nice gain when it comes to that. As far as their vertical concepts and all, they will try to take Watson. They will try to really stress the middle of the field safety, I think, especially when it comes to their deeper shot calls in this game. So that might be something they would love. Nothing. I'm a huge Romeo Doubs fan, coming out of college and all, but he's not one that's got a lot of blazing speed. I think Christian Watson does a better job of stretching vertically, but both those guys can get deep. And it does feel though that they would predominantly, especially if they're going to throw between the numbers down the middle of the field vertically, that Christian Watson is a guy they would like to try to get the ball to. And I think, as Tom pointed out to us, there have been some instances where Love, and I think their offensive coordinator was asked about this yesterday during his press conferences. They would like to see Jordan get that thing out in front of his receivers a little bit better.
Yeah, Watson is their big play threat, their true height, weight, speed guy. That's what he was coming out of North Dakota, had that big rookie year. His ADOT this year is 17.2. That's average depth of target. That's 4th highest in the NFL. So he's obviously a vertical threat, just really have not been able to connect as much as they would like to. obviously as you transition from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. But yeah, they're a young group, but they're athletic. Wicks and Reed are versatile. Musgrave was one of the top athletes in a loaded tight end class. He caught his first touchdown against the Rams. So I think they want to, have some more vertical concepts. They want to spread the defense out. They want to flood some zone concepts. As you said, they want to put some safeties in conflict. So they've not been really a big play offense, but they do want to have the desire to be a big play offense in the passing game and try to really create some one-on-one matchups and utilize all the space that's afforded to them.
Look, Romeo Doubs got 5 touchdowns already this season.
Yeah. And they got 6 Packers have caught a touchdown pass this year. So I think Love is distributing the ball pretty well. It's just a young group that's trying to figure things out how to play in the NFL.
Yeah, and the accuracy issue with him has come into play. 59.6% completion percentage. While he does have 12 touchdown passes, he's got 8 interceptions on top of it there. So and look, he's mobile enough too that he's not a guy that you're probably going to want to play a lot of man against with your back turned to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got off to a good start. They put up 38 on Chicago week 1. And then since then, the offense has really calmed down. Love threw 6 touchdowns the first 2 games, and he's thrown just 6 in the last, 6 games. So the offense has really kind of come back to earth after not playing a team like the Bears to start the season.
Their run game overall hasn't been bad. I forgot to look what their negative plays are, because it feels like it feels like they've had some instances where there's been a little bit of feast, but enough famine to kind of counterbalance it overall there. But they're averaging 4 yards a carry, and look, they've Jones obviously has missed some time. Dillon's their leading rusher, but both those guys are guys that can get their shoulders squared in between the tackles and get yards after first contact. So if they're probably going to come out like several teams have against the Steelers this year and get Jordan Love ahead of the chains, where you can really mess this offense up, in my opinion, is get a guy like Love pressing in some second and long and third and long situations, because he would have to hold the football a little bit longer. And that's when you can, this is a tasty, and I think Zach Thomas played well on tape, but let's see him against Watt. Let's see both their tackles against Highsmith and Watt.
Yeah, especially if the backup Rasheed Walker is out there on Highsmith. I think he's, I liked him coming out of Penn State. He's got some size. I think he's played reasonably well, but those are advantages for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think the overall idea is, like Tennessee, let's stop the run, force the quarterback to beat us in our place. We're making some splash plays. He's not taking tremendous care of the football overall. That's going to be the MO, just broadly speaking, is make Jordan Love beat you.
Yeah, and Love is experienced enough that if you keep him ahead of the chains and keep opposing defenses get much. You go back to that game against the Texans, right? Jordan Love is experienced enough that if you get him in a lot more manageable situations, that I think he can take advantage of it with that shorter passing game. But keep a lid on this thing. Stop the run on early downs. Get in some second and third down and longer distance situations. I think you might be able to get after him. He's sacked 18 times so far this season?
I believe so. I know he's been sacked 8 times the last 2 games. So there's been some pressure. I don't know if that's all on him or the line or receivers, probably a combination, but he's been sacked quite a bit lately.
And look, their offense, I think, has had a few penalties as well, too. So go to the bathroom before this thing starts, because it could make for a long first quarter with these teams.
All right, Dave, let's flip over to the Packers defense. And again, injuries are going to kind of dictate a lot in this game. Alexander, Walker, Clark, etc. I think it's a pretty good front 7. I think there's questions in the secondary, especially without Alexander, presuming that he does not play. And so can Pittsburgh establish the run, but also can they take advantage of that weaker outside cornerback group that Green Bay appears to be having?
Yeah, and I would like to test their edges too in the running game, especially with those if those young corners, and it looks like they're probably going to play quite a bit in this game. When you look at them defensively from a rush standpoint, they can be run off of left guard. They are 29th in the league on 23 rushes to left guard for 5.4. Really, anything to the left side, and possibly even left end, because did Jaire mostly play on the right side? I think he did, didn't he?
Honestly, I'm not. Yeah, I'd have to look at some of the advanced numbers or metrics in PFF. I don't know exactly where he's been lining up.
I mean, he's a very physical guy, a guy not afraid to come out and help out in the run. So this is to me, I think this is and it'll be interesting to see Kenny Clark and what kind, because Kenny Clark healthy is a wrecker. I mean, we talked about him ahead of that game a couple of years ago. I mean, that guy can wreck up front, but if he's not 100%, and look, Carl Brooks, we know a lot about Carl Brooks, right, through the pre-draft process. I think he's playing really well, but I do believe that you can scheme this up against this defense of theirs and execute and get some yards on the ground. And one thing, I thought the Packers website did a good job of breaking down their usage of these TE stunts that they like to run. And at first you think, oh, are they only running them on the right side with Brooks and Van Noy? But the further you get into the tape, they'll run them on both sides of this defense there, and they'll run double TE stunts in this thing, and they'll run them on early downs at that to try to get some guys free to make some run stops, and they were able to get a couple of those against the Rams as well too. So you have to be aware of them being willing to run these TE stunt twist on any given down with them. Brooks really, I thoug's played well, at least in the section of game tape that I've watched. He gets his hands up well to bat down passes on top of it. But with all that said, and they'll bring in Rashad Gary. They've been trying to limit his snaps coming off of injury, as Tom told us there. You don't want these guys to get in situations where they're pinning their ears back in the second and third down and long situation there, because Gary can still get after the quarterback quite well overall. But I do get a feel that if you attack and scheme this up right and execute right, that this team can be ran on. And then, I talked about the pass defense with them earlier in the week. Man, if you don't have Jaire, so smart, man, on that interception that Anthony Johnson had in that game against the Rams, he reads that perfectly and gets very good depth in kind of that snag concept there. And he gets a handle on that ball, and that, we know how tip balls usually come down in the opposition's hands, and that's what happened with Anthony Johnson in the pick in that game as well too. So if they don't have Jaire Alexander, that's a huge loss in this defense for obvious reasons.
Sure, because it's not just about Alexander. I mean, it starts with him, but who do you replace him with? Your top corners are now a 7th-round rookie in Carrington Valentine, and I think Valentine, as Tom talked about, it's the Valentine and Valentine group, and I think Robert Burchell is the guy they talked about maybe having to elevate from the practice squad, or having a guy that's going to have to play some snaps on defense. They got a good nickel corner in Nixon. He's a great return man, but I think also fits to run well inside. But do they have the guys on the outside? And Ford's coming off the injury, and Savage is hurt, so that secondary is looking pretty shaky right now. So can you attack those outside corners? That has to be Pittsburgh's mission in this one. But to go back to the run game, yeah, like you said, Dave, they one gap, they slant, they penetrate, they run stunt, and they really try to create some chaos and mess with your blocking schemes and all that up front. So if you're Pittsburgh, do you try to run as much zone? Because on that zone track, if it gets disrupted by these stunts and these kind of loopers and crashers, it might be tough to handle on the fly. So I wonder if you do try to use a bit more of that power and man scheme in this game to simplify things.
Sign me up for it. I like to see it. I think they match up well that way specifically there.
Yeah. So I really want to see how Pittsburgh handles that up front, because I know early in the season their zone tracks they weren't communicating well, they weren't climbing well, they weren't on the same page, and it was really creating some issues. It's been better as of late, so we'll just kind of see what approach Pittsburgh has in this one overall. They are a pretty heavy blitz team. I think, as Tom talked about, their DC Joe Barry kind of has that Vic Fangio vibe. He wants to bring heat, he wants to bring pressure. It's a lot of inside linebackers coming, the occasional DB as well, but they're not going to they're not always going to sit back in coverage, but when they do, you're going to see them do some funky stuff. They're going to drop 8. They're going to drop 9. I watched them against, I think, Minnesota or Los Angeles. They dropped 9 in the coverage. They rushed 2. So you kind of get some occasional funky looking stuff on third down. I know the safety situation makes this a little bit more complicated, but they do like to disguise and rotate safeties post snap. We'll see if they do that if Ford comes back this week. Maybe some more veteran guys that they trust to do those kinds of things. But they do like to change the post snap picture. It's a lot of single high, a lot of cover 1, cover 3, but they're going to present some 2 high looks pre snap.
They do a good job too of mugging up those A gaps too, and not tipping off. Sometimes you can kind of tell, is he coming? Is he not coming? With kind of their pre-snap movements at times. But I think they do a very good job at disguising that as well too. And they're not afraid to send them when they mug them. Yeah,
but I think it's been tough to run on the outside. Not having Quay Walker, who's a great sideline to sideline dude, is going to be a huge loss for them. I mean, it's going to, Campbell's still a good player, but Walker's kind of the dude inside linebacker. So if he's not available, that is, I think, a pretty substantial loss.
Yeah, look, Van Noy is somebody I'd like to test to see if he can get off some of these blocks.
Who's that? Van Ness?
Van
Ness. Van Noy. Van Ness. Yeah. You said he's more of an early down guy?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then you said Gary's coming in because he's coming off the ACL last year. They just paid him a bunch of money. I don't know. I'm not sure what the reason was to pay him $107 million midseason, but they did.
They blitz 34% of the time, so they're not afraid to send numbers.
Yeah, again, that's kind of the Joe Barry. But I wonder in this game, if you're down Alexander and you got these great outside receivers, I think you play a lot of too high because they do keep a lid on things. They don't allow the big play. I think if you're Green Bay, just me personally, you play too high. Don't allow Johnson and Pickens to win the game and trust your front to stop the run. I think if you're Green Bay, that's my mentality in this game, at least.
Well, I mean, they haven't given up. That's one of the call. They haven't been at totality wise. They have not been a bad defense statistically. And a lot of that's related, obviously, I think, to them not giving up the big play and getting a few turnovers along the way, and then getting themselves in leverage down in distant situations so they can get after the quarterback there. But I think they're going to once again try to, especially if they have to play these young corners, and there is some uncertainty of what they're going to do at safety there. I think they should put Anthony Johnson. I'm with Tom. I think they should put Anthony Johnson more on the field and see what they have in him. But you have to feel like their overall goal is to not get beat over the top with a guy like George Pickens. Make the Steelers earn everything underneath and tackle the catch, and don't give up the explosive play. The Steelers have had problems creating explosive plays.
Yeah, the Packers have only allowed 23 completions of 20-plus yards. That's 10th best in football. The longest reception they've allowed this year is 45 yards. That's second fewest, or the second lowest amount of long reception allowed this year. The pass defense overall, the numbers do look impressive, but of course, you move Alexander from that, it does begin changing the equation.
They run a lot of zone coverage, nearly 70%.
Yeah, and probably more, because I don't know if they're going to ask these corners to man up on Johnson and Pickens and expect those guys to win 1v1.
If you see it, you see them pressed, you got to take your shots then.
Yeah. I mean, their corners do have some size. Like Valentine, all those Kentucky corners are big and long and lanky, and so they're going to try to put hands on. But can Pickens stack and Johnson beat press coverage with his release? That's going to be critical.
Look, the way if Deontay Johnson is Deontay Johnson, there ought to be some space for him, I think, in this game.
Yeah, I think so too. Did I have one other note here? I don't know if I had one or not to mention. Oh yeah, the defensive line and the edges, to kind of go off your point, 11 pass deflections this year. Brooks has 4. He had 2 in the last game, and so they get their hands up in throwing lanes. It's not just Brooks, but certainly him. So want to be careful. I think both defenses do a good job of getting hands up in throwing lanes. So watch out for that tip ball. With that the bounce up in the air becomes a pick that changes the game. So that's very much something to watch, especially with that quick game.
And then back to the stunts again. They're going to stunt, and how the Steelers communicate and handle, pick these up might be a key point in this as well too.
Yeah, for sure. They do. Pittsburgh may want to run some weak side plays on this one because the Packers like the slant strong side. And if you can run a weak side and kind of get them away from the slant, I've seen that have some success. And so maybe you want to mix things up. Some tendency breakers don't always run to the strong side of the formation.
All right.
Also, got to note their return game. Their return game is great. Nixon, one of the top return guys in football. I believe he leads the NFL in kickoff average at just under 26 yards. I know that kickoffs have kind of gone the way of the dodo, but maybe some poor weather. Maybe that creates some more opportunities. I don't know exactly what's going to be like in Pittsburgh this week. Let's see what the Pittsburgh weather is going to be. It's going to be chilly. It's going to have that fall feel. It's going to be 52 degrees. Should be, clear skies overall, but just be careful of the return game because Packers have one of the better in football.
All right. And Rich Bisaccia talked yesterday about you get into the colder time of years and where kickoffs might tend to go more to the edge. And interesting to hear him talk about how you might see more fair catches and all on those things further you get into winter.
It doesn't sound like Nixon is the fair catch type of dude, though, from what Tom said. He's a guy that wants to return every chance he gets, and he's got a good resume. He was an all-pro kick returner last year, so he's got the numbers to back it up overall. But yeah, I love that battle. My favorite battle of the week is Rich Bisaccia versus Danny Smith. Just two old school. I think Bisaccia is from like Yonkers, and Smith is just that Western PA Pittsburgh dude. Just two salt of the earth guys. Been coaching since the 70s, 80s. Just out there doing battle. I can't wait to see it, Dave.
Haven't they blocked a couple of either like extra points or field goals this year too?
That's a good question. Wouldn't shock me with Bisaccia. I don't have the data on that off the top of my head. It looks like Carl Brooks had a blocked one earlier this year, so they got at least maybe two. Yeah, maybe one or two. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point, Dave.
So they've had a little bit of. Let me see if I can find some blocks real quick.
I know they have at least.
Yeah, they
one.
have two. Josh Neiman has a block on special teams. Carl Brooks has a block on special teams.
Yeah, that's not their tackle. Who's Josh Neiman? Is that their tackle?
Yeah, I think so, isn't it?
He blocked the punt, their left tackle, or blocked the field goal. I got to look at that play. I mean, I see it. I see the headline here, but I'm just trying to get my head around their left tackle blocking a field goal, which is incredible. And I need to go see it.
He blocked the 50-yarder from Carlson, it seems like.
He's on field goal rush team. All right. Well, I need to go watch this after this podcast because I want to see what the heck happened on that one. That's pretty cool.
Oh, wait. I found the clip here.
Okay, if you can send it, yeah. Shoot, I'll definitely retweet that or something. I mean, that last time you heard a left tackle getting a hand on a field goal.
I haven't watched it. I just know that he had talked about. I know it was a topic of conversation with him. I just sent it to you there. If you
okay. I might get an ad here on the Packers side. I don't know for sure how quickly it's going to play. I know this is not great podcasting. Oh no, I see it coming up right now. So yeah, he's right over the A gap there. Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
very cool. 53-yarder from Carlson. All right, so yeah, that's a great point by you. I think special teams. Packers, very, very good. Bisaccia's units have always been strong. So, Danny Smith, bring your A game.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Dave, before we get to our predictions for week 10 and for the Steelers-Packers game, let's hear from our friends over at MyBookie before we make our picks. We are, what are we on the week here? We're both 1-0? Yeah, that I watched the last 2 minutes. I said, all right, I've seen enough. And did you watch the whole game, Dave? I don't know if you did.
Yeah, I watched it before I tuned in the Pens game last night.
Yeah, not the most exciting game, but we're both 1-0. So let's hear from our friends at MyBookie and then make the rest of our picks.
All right. All right, Alex, if you found a $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't walk past it. So why are you passing up on cashing winners every weekend? MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests to fill all your sports betting needs anytime, anywhere, so you can turn that sports knowledge into cash in your wallet. Bet on the NFL or play for a big or NHL, or play for a share of big cash prizes in the weekly blackjack tournaments that they have. If you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, that time is now. Make your winning move today. Sign up at MyBookie at mybookie.ag. Use promo code TERRIBLE and claim your deposit match redeemable up to $1,000. Again, that's promo code TERRIBLE to claim your bonus. Experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your own home. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie, and to do so, you can go to mybookie.ag. And once again, we hope that you use promo code TERRIBLE to claim your deposit match redeemable up to $1,000.
All right, Dave, like you said, 1-0 on the week so far. Let's make the rest of our picks, and then we'll close things out with the Steelers-Packers game.
All right, Indianapolis Colts on the road against the New England Patriots. The Colts are road favorites. 2 points in this one.
Yeah, not sure which way I want to go in this one. I'll lean the Colts, Dave.
I'll take the Patriots to eke one out here. So give me those 2 points there. Cleveland, big AFC North battle. Cleveland Browns on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens at home laying 6.5 points.
Ooh, it's a big line there. I believe Watson is going to play in this one. 2 great defenses. Ravens, though, better offense. Give me Baltimore.
Yeah, hard not to take the Ravens the way they've been playing right now. So 6.5, they'll hook me on this one. I'll lay the 6.5 at home. Jaguars hosting the 49ers. 49ers on the road laying 3 points.
And it's been a tough couple games for the 49ers. I think they're getting healthier. They do have to travel, but I think San Francisco bounces back. Give me the 49ers.
Yeah, my gut tells me to take the 49ers on this one. I think they can cover that 3 on the road. Give me the 49ers lay to 3. The Minnesota Vikings with Joshua Dobbs at quarterback. Your new NFC Offensive Player of the Week in Josh Dobbs, hosting the Saints. All that said, the Saints are road favorites by 3 points in this. Does Josh Dobbs come crashing back to earth a little bit?
I think a little bit. As much as I love Dobbs and the story, kudos and congrats to him. I'm going to go the Saints.
I will bet against Josh Dobbs in this one as well, too. I'll take the Saints on the road laying the 3 points. Cincinnati Bengals at home hosting the Houston Texans. This ought to be a fairly entertaining game. All that said, the Bengals 6.5 point favorites at home against the Texans.
Yeah, I know Stroud. Unbelievable performance, I should say. He's their guy. I just think they're still figuring things out a bit. They've had some fits and starts. The Bengals are in a groove. The defense is playing better. I'm taking Cincinnati.
Yeah, I just think when you look at the way Cincinnati can get after the quarterback, and I think Cincinnati might be without T. Higgins in this one. Last I looked, I think Jamar might try to give it a go here. But all that said, I think the Bengals can handle the Texans at home. I'll lay the 6.5 points there. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home hosting the Titans. Buccaneers 1 point home favorites in this one.
Yeah, this one's tough. Tampa Bay has a pretty good run defense, and that's the lifeblood of the Titans team still. But, you know what? Give me Tennessee. I thought Will Levis played such a good game. I think he can pull this one off.
Yeah, I think combined with Derrick Henry and Will Levis, the way we've seen him play so far, I'm apt to think the Titans can win this one outright. So give me that point with the Titans there. Arizona Cardinals at home hosting the Falcons. I will not be watching this one. All that said, Falcons on the road favored by 1.5 against the Cardinals.
You know, Kyler Murray should be back this week, so there is that aspect. They're going to have, their supposed franchise quarterback. We'll see what the future of him really is.
James Conner making it back for this one?
It's his window's open. It sounds like maybe. I don't know for sure. Saturday will be the day. You know what? Give me Arizona. I'll take a stab at it.
I'll go the other way. Falcons need to have this one if they're going to hang around here. I'll take the Falcons, lay the 1.5 on the road. Chargers, this ought to be a good game, hosting the Lions. The Lions are road favorites by 3 points in this one.
Oh, on the road. A lot of long travel this week for some of these teams. Yeah, give me Detroit. The Chargers, they find ways to lose. I think Dan Campbell's team will find ways to win.
I think Lions are the sexy pick right now, so I'll go the opposite way. I'll take the Chargers to upset the Lions, so give me those 3 points. Cowboys hosting the Giants. Ooh, big line on this one. Cowboys at home laying 17.
Can the Giants at least cover? It's NFC East matchup. Dallas, should win. I'll say the Giants cover. Dak throws a pick or two. That defense for New York can still make some plays. Dallas wins, but Giants cover.
I'll go the opposite way. Cowboys big. I'll lay the 17 big number in this one. Seahawks at home playing the Commanders. Seahawks 6.5 home favorites.
Yeah, I know they got shellacked by Baltimore last week, but they're going to bounce back. That pass rush is going to get after Sam Howell. So give me Seattle.
I'll take Seattle, lay the 6.5 points in that one as well, too. The Raiders in a pick'em game against the Jets. Raiders at home, pick'em game.
Another I will not be watching. It's a pick 'em, don't watch 'em type of game. I'll say the Antonio Pierce fever moves on at least one more week. I'll take the Raiders.
I'll take the Raiders as well too because of Max Crosby. That's enough reason for me to take them there. The Bills at home hosting the Broncos. Bills are 7.5-point home favorites against the Broncos.
Buffalo's a frustrating team. They don't play up to their talent all the time, but they win by 10. Give me Buffalo.
I'll take Buffalo in a blowout as well, too. I'll lay the 7.5 points. That takes us back to the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Green Bay Packers. Last time Green Bay won in Pittsburgh, 1970. The Steelers are now 3.5-point home favorites against the Packers.
It might concern you. It might concern me. You don't see many people picking the Packers. I was trying to find in my weekly, how the national media is picking this one. I could only find one person picking Green Bay. And it kind of gets you a little bit nervous that everyone's a little too confident in a Pittsburgh Steelers team that never plays a comfortable game. All that said, though, assuming Alexander does not play, Pittsburgh having the advantage on the outside, at home, taking great care of the football, being a more mistake-free type of team than Green Bay. Packers don't force many takeaways defensively. I'm going Pittsburgh 24-16. Pittsburgh 24-16.
Look, I think Kenny Pickett, I think this sets up for Kenny Pickett to hit a bottom of the ninth home run in this one. I like the Steelers 5-4.
That's for the 7th inning stretch, right?
This could be one of those slug 'em out games where both teams move the ball between the 40s and like one of those electronic football games where they just sit there and rattle in the middle of the middle of the field. That's you never got to play electronic football or with the vibrating table and all like that. So you're missing out on the analogy there. Look, I think the Steelers are the better team here, top to bottom. I think they find a way to win this. That said, 3.5 points. I think the game might be a little bit closer than that. I think the Steelers win this. They probably win it late again. I have the Steelers winning 20-17 in this one. So give me the Packers plus the 3.5 points. But I have the Steelers winning this outright, 20-17 in a close game.
What concerns you the most about Green Bay's ability to keep this one super close or potentially win it?
I think they're going to be able to maybe run the ball a little bit in this game, and I think there's a good chance that they get after Kenny Pickett a little bit in this game as well too. Maybe Rashawn Gary forces a turnover that gets Green Bay on the short field on this one. I'm not so concerned about the explosive play element for either team really in this game. I just think overall, top to bottom, the Steelers make one more. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the explosive plays come out something like 3-2 in the Steelers' favor. Maybe the Steelers win the turnover battle 2-1, so you have an even tot score in this one, and the Steelers make a play late in this game. I don't know, maybe a field goal to break the tie or something like that. That's the way this one kind of lines up in my head.
The two things that concern me the most about what Green Bay is able to do that could give Pittsburgh problems is A, the run stunts up front that I think can disrupt and create some negative plays. And then I think they're just a really athletic skill position group at wide receiver. And Pittsburgh does not have the legs besides Porter, especially assuming that Minka is going to be out. And so can a Watson or, Reed or Wicks or Musgrave with the linebackers hurting for Pittsburgh make a play. So I wonder about the athleticism matchup in the secondary. But I think Pittsburgh can still prevail.
I do think, Tom talked about, this is one that could get away, probably more apt to get away from the Packers than it is the Steelers. I'm not predicting that, but I mean, if there was ever a game that the Steelers could have the most comfortable win of the season, whatever that
low bar.
whatever that looks like, this could potentially be it. It feels like if this one got away from the Packers early, it could snowball on them with Love trying to force some things and that kind of thing. Once again, not predicted. I see where Tom's coming from with that, but I have to see it before to believe it there. I just think the Steelers are the better of the two teams, top to bottom here overall, and especially if they can get Heyward and Elandon Roberts to play in this game overall. But I think the Steelers win a close one here.
I suppose I do have Pittsburgh with their quote unquote most comfortable win of the year at 8, which is the move. They've not won a game by more than 7 points this season. But blowouts in Pittsburgh just don't happen. So I'm happy to be wrong about that, but they just don't occur in Pittsburgh.
This is one of those games where, once again, it feels like the Steelers should win it. I don't care how they win it. Just win this one. They become the Raiders. Just win, baby.
Just win, baby. Yeah, that's their MO. That's how they are. Win close, win ugly, win barely, but win. That is all that matters. That's all Pittsburgh cares about. They're a scoreboard type of team, which is fair. But then it goes into the whole thing about, okay, if you're barely scraping by against the Packers and the Titans, etc., if and when you get to the playoffs, what does that look like?
Okay.
All right, Dave, let's get to a couple of reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, Danny writes in, Coach Tomlin mentioned that he was going to have refs present at team practices this week in an effort to reduce penalties. Who are these folks? Are they active? Yeah, his whole question, are they retired refs, alternates? Danny, I was really hoping that someone from the media would have hit that in the Tomlin press conference. And since Alex and I talked about it the other day, I haven't researched it or anything like that. I would think that these because of the points of emphasis and all, wouldn't you want, and I'm sure there's cost involved in that, and that's probably why teams don't have refs every week, and refs aren't full-time anyway within that. So, Danny, we don't have a great question of what this looks like, the minutia involved, and it would be fun to hear Tomlin talk 5 minutes on what all goes into this.
You know, I meant to pass this along to you, Dave, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn to mention this, but I got a DM from a listener of the podcast who actually did give me some information here. He says, I just listened to the podcast. I know a guy who is a local high school official, does high school games. He officiated the Steelers practice last Wednesday. I don't know what they did for training camp. That might be different. I believe NFL refs, I think Bob Labriola said NFL refs come in for training camp. And then for the high school guys, what the Steelers do is they tell them what to watch for in practice, watch for holding, or let DBs be physical against receivers, that type of stuff. So it seems like training camp, NFL refs do come in during the season. It's more high school, and they just kind of tell them, hey, call this more, don't call this, to kind of give that NFL feel. So I appreciate that listener for cluing me in, and hopefully that's okay for me to say publicly.
And you reduce the cost aspect if they're local guys, hey, come on down. We'll pay you, $100, whatever, And
some of these NFL reps are doing like basketball games, technically full time. So it's probably hard logistically to get NFL reps to travel across the country.
I just worry about the point of emphasis type stuff. Sure. I guess they just go off of a sheet and say, hey, we want you to concentrate on this. And, looking ahead at whatever crew they're going to have this week, what they've been known, what the high percentage of things they call and that kind of thing there. So, I mean, that obviously makes sense. My main point is I would like to hear Tomlin talk about it for 5 minutes,
Yeah. Don't think he'll be asked, but wish he could be.
Brett writes in, the media discussion about Matt Canada is a little pointless. As you said before the season, they aren't going to fire him. And if the offense is still broken, he won't be back. Anything else is wasted breath. My question is about the process of finding a replacement. He says, in my observation, Tomlin tend to hire second-tier coaches. I'm not saying they don't have talent, but they tend to be guys with limited experience or name recognition. He's not hiring the Wink Martindales of the world. The guys he brings in tend to not have a lot of gravitas, always like he's hiring guys that can't challenge him or threaten his job. Last time they brought in a name was when they brought in Todd Haley. He says, and I believe that came from ownership. Now we've gone through several coordinator changes since then. Each time the offense seems to get worse. Is it time for ownership slash con to do it again? He says, I'm not saying bringing in Todd Haley, but is it a time for an arranged marriage for Tomlin, perhaps with a more named quarterback whisperer? When they brought in Haley, they were protecting their investment in the franchise quarterback. Could that be precedent for this situation? Man, we are ways away from really, once again, having. I will say this. I still think Tomlin. Do you really want Art Rooney saying bring in this guy?
No, I probably wouldn't want the owner to solely say bring in this guy. I mean, you want to have. It's just probably not a great football type thing to have the owner handpick the specific coordinator.
I would agree there. Now, would there be conversations where Rooney maybe suggest a couple of guys? Have you looked at this guy? Here, I think that's a possibility there. But I would think Tomlin has a lot of say in this. And I've said this in the past. This next one that they have, I would like to be an experienced, but yet a little bit on the younger side coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely with NFL experience. I don't want to go get the hot commodity out of college or anything along those lines. I would like this next coordinator to have been recent, been on a few staffs, but with enough experience, but yet, not 50, 60 years old on top of it.
Well, you kind of just described Glenn Thomas, the offensive assistant right now, who just got hired this year.
Well, look, and we know the track record with them going from within.
Right. So, I mean, Thomas is younger, but he's been on NFL staffs. He's been in college. I'm not advocating for him, but I'm just saying you kind of described the resume that you're looking for. He's one of those guys that would fit that bill, and he might get an interview if they do move on from Canada. Yeah, I mean, we can debate the whole coaching thing. I think, Tomlin certainly, has a ton of sway, and he's, the main guy in terms of choosing the coordinators. But, he did hire Todd Haley. I mean, that can't ignore that. He did hire Brian Flores, who was a name guy. Teryl Austin was not a huge name guy, but he's an experienced guy that was kind of rumored for some head coaching jobs way back when. So not this total, no one's ever heard of him before type of hire. So we could have a big debate about that, but my focus is less there right now.
AG writes in, you've mentioned your belief that what a quarterback is after 20 games. Really, my statement was a lot more. I mean, you can really start talking about a quarterback after 20 games. And he says, I submit that you typically don't know what a quarterback is until between halfway through their second year and the end of their third year. The way I look at it, he says, I think that this is backed by the data. Kenny has ended his apprenticeship, and we're starting the 15-month evaluation period on him. He says, I wouldn't begin to write him off until this point next year, and he would have to have shown almost no progression even then if we're breaking in a new OC. He says, I think you have to give him the second half of 2024 as well. Obviously, the reason we feel the need to rush things is because our best players, Cam, TJ, and Minka, are getting older and more injury prone. Unfortunately, instead of acknowledging in 2020 that Ben was cooked and going up to get a quarterback like Justin Fields to be prepared to transition in 2022, we took the short-sighted approach of drafting a running back. But don't let this mistake force you to throw poor baby Kenny out with the bathwater. Brian Baldinger talked on 93.7 yesterday, and I think he made a lot of good points when it comes to Kenny Pickett and how, to start off this year, it didn't have, Deontay Johnson for slate there. What else did he have to, obviously Pat Freiermuth,
tight end, yeah.
The tight end situation there. The thing that we have, and basically Baldinger said, hey, let's give it a little bit more time. Look, they've got nothing but, in my opinion, nobody's doing nothing when it comes to Kenny Pickett right now and making any hard decisions. And I think we've made that pretty clear that if you're in the pool of people that say Kenny Pickett's not it, well, if you're in that group of people, you're just going to have to sit on your hands for at least through next season when it comes to that. I think Baldinger made some good points. The 20 game thing is that I've been talking about is I don't think that you can have in-depth conversations about what a quarterback is good at, not good at, and all those things until you reach that point. Look, the Packers are still really haven't hit that point with Jordan Love, but how many people right now on the Packers side, if you're a Packers fan right now and you're looking at the slate of work that Jordan Love has, they're probably drawing the line in the sand right now, right?
Probably. I think there's a lack of confidence that Love is that guy. It's a weirder situation because he's been in the league for so long, but hasn't had the experience. So that's a different scope to kind of evaluate a player. But yeah, confidence not high right now.
But within that, I do think that you've got Deontay Johnson back. Hopefully you get Pat Freiermuth back here. I think it's going to be very fun to draw the line in the sand after this past week and divide this season up into the first 8 games. Now, look, without a doubt, missing Deontay and some of these guys aside, I think it's been a little bit underwhelming of where I thought Kenny would be at this point there. Within that, I mean, we got no choice but to watch these next 9 games because he's not going anywhere with that. I really want to see a nice progression in Kenny in these next 9 games, and especially if you're able to have all your eligibles stay on the field, get Freiermuth back, and all like that. But the emailer here says, this goes now into a 15-month evaluation period, and then the next OC, assuming there's a next OC, at what point do you draw the line and say that this is what Kenny Pickett is?
Yeah, I would just say a couple quick things. Hey, no one, at least Dave and I, are not trying to get rid of Kenny Pickett today. It's not our intent. I mean, he's going to be the quarterback for the rest of the year, assuming he stays healthy. He's going to have nearly 30 career starts by the end of the season. That's enough to begin evaluating a guy. And yes, you could talk about some of the external factors, the injuries, the play calling. Reality is, for almost every quarterback, they're dealing with injuries or dealing with some external issue. The line's hurt, whatever the defense isn't good. We can play that game probably forever, but there's still enough to evaluate Kenny Pickett as a quarterback, as himself. And he's probably going to be the starter in 2024. And so you're going to have the entire 2024 season to evaluate him as well. So I'm not worried about lack of sample size or playing time because he's going to get the playing time to evaluate him off of.
And look, the completion percentage accuracy thing that we talked about is a concern right now. You definitely want to see that get better over these final 9 games.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be better for sure.
All right. Him attacking the middle of the field a little bit more is something you want to see. He's done a good job, obviously, in not turning the football over, but there have been some interceptable plays that he's gotten away with. So, top of my head, most of those seem to be more miscommunication related, but there have been some that he throws that he's gotten away with. That being said, there, look, it's going to be fun to look at these next 9 games with him, especially against some of these opponents. Look, the best thing he can do is go out on Sunday against the Packers, against a defense that probably going to be without a couple of guys, and have his best game of his career, or right there up there, with it. That will get more of the doubters off that side of things, I think, overall there. I thought Baldinger brought up some great points in there with not having DJ and all like that. But at some point, you got to, the quarterback still got to elevate whoever he has around him and elevate them.
Yeah, the things that I've been critical of Pickett on are not related to Deontay Johnson's been hurt or the tight end position's kind of funky. When you're missing some open receivers, some plays there for the taking that aren't there, some pocket presence issues earlier in the season. Those aren't related to, who's in and who's out. That's just to a man, Kenny Pickett's playing well or not well.
And, you go on, and I think even Baldinger brought up, Josh Allen didn't have the best accuracy, starting off, and now that's come in line. And this reader, I'm not going to read all this that he has here, but he talks about, several that made jumps after their second. Could Kenny be a late bloomer? We've seen late bloomers across the league as well too.
Yeah, but those are usually like younger guys, not older guys that
right.
come out of college. I had to guess.
He mentions I don't want to go. He's got a lot written here. He says you have outliers on the other end of the spectrum: Cousins, Tannehill, Geno, that didn't play their best ball until well into their careers. He says there are outliers like Dak and Russell Wilson that were incredible in year one, but then didn't replicate this success. Here's the thing: Kenny's not going anywhere. We're not suggesting that Kenny go anywhere at this point. I just always feel. Well, look, I asked Tom this, and Tom tap danced around it.
Around the question about Love or Pickett.
Right. Who would you take right now, Jordan Love or Kenny Pickett?
I'd probably lean Pickett, but I mean, I understand Tom's point of view because I haven't sat there and in-depthly watched Jordan Love
right.
that I've watched Kenny Pickett. So it's a little hard for me to answer that just because, I watched the last couple of games of Jordan Love, but I've not seen the totality of his career and his play. I
think I'd definitively take Pickett over Love from what I've seen.
What's the biggest reason for that?
I think he is more in tune with offensive, seeing things, knowing where he wants to go with the football. The overall leader, I just feel like he's a better leader overall. And then there's a whole end of game thing.
Yeah, the end of game thing, I think Tom talked about. Love has struggled in those late game moments. Yeah, I think Pickett just takes care of the football better. I need a quarterback that protects the football more. And so that's why I would lean Pickett.
Right. Now, if you look statistically, Love has more touchdowns than Kenny, double, I think, 12-6, but he also has more interceptions too, right?
Yeah, and Pickett has
Kenny has the end of game accomplishments.
Right. Pickett has a top 10 lowest interception rate. Love is one of the worst in football. So that's what, and now again, I don't know the reason for all of Love's interceptions. Maybe they're not all on him. They're not all created equal, but just baseline, that's kind of what I make that evaluation off of.
All right. Dan writes in, on the last podcast, you talked about the possibility of Broderick Jones being the long-term right tackle. Jones is a blue chip pedigree guy who's a natural left tackle, he says. And it seems short-sighted to move him to a position of lower value, all in the name of keeping Dan Moore at left tackle, who's been below average there for his entire tenure. Most teams spend years trying to find a long-term franchise left tackle. Steelers may have found one, but instead of cashing in, they almost immediately switch him out of position. Do you guys have any concerns about potential long-term position switch being a mistake? Dan, reading my first inclination is to say if Broderick Jones can be all-pro, Pro Bowl right tackle, leave him the hell there. Because in today's NFL, the way these pass rushers, most of them go around the league, these premier pass rushers, they will go to wherever your weakest component is. So if you have a strong left tackle, they'll just flip these pass rushers over to your weak spot over at right tackle. So years ago, and look, even the pay's starting to distribute out a little bit better, I think, between left and right tackle. I mean, there's still this notion that the left tackle, because of the blind side with the quarterbacks, is where you got to have this guy. All right. But if, and I don't know how Broderick Jones might very well end up at left tackle as early as week one, or who knows what's going to happen with him. But in this short time being right now, if Broderick Jones comes out over the remainder of the season, assuming he stays at right tackle, which, look, we know this is a week to week, things can happen. An injury might happen. He might have to flip over back, to the left side there. But let's say he stays at right tackle right now. If that guy balls out over there and is playing at a high level, my first notion is to leave him there.
Yeah, I just say, I made the comment about that. We had the discussion about that because let's say you go into the offseason and find a great left tackle in the draft and he's really a left tackle. Then maybe you can just put him there and leave Jones at right tackle. Or you sit there and say, we found this great right tackle and we can move Jones back over. So I think at this point, you just go in and say, let's go find a really good tackle. And whether he's left or right, we can make it work because Jones is flexible. Ideally, yeah, Jones probably should go back to left tackle, but you just have some options and possibilities there. And I was just impressed by how well Jones looked at right tackle, given his lack of experience there. And to Dave's point, yeah, in today's NFL, while left tackles still get paid more than right tackles, you got TJ Watt faces right tackles every week. Max Crosby faces right tackles every week. Garrett flips. Bosa plays primarily, I think, on the left side a bit more than the right side, although he does, of course, play both. So you better have a good right tackle who can pass protect. I think Pittsburgh is well aware of that because their right tackle squares off against TJ Watt every single day.
I'm not concerned about potential long-term position switch being a mistake until it looks like it was a mistake. I know that's look, put your best guys out there at their best positions in the moment. Live for today. And right now, because look, Mike Tomlin came right out and said Dan Moore can't play. Basically said Dan Moore can't play right tackle. So in the short term, if you want to get Broderick Jones on the field and you don't want Chukwuma Okorafor on the field, well, then Broderick Jones is going to play right tackle. I understand the questions about the concerns long term, but it's better to win now in the short term with putting people wherever they need to be. And then after the season, look at it and say, well, are we good? Because you don't know what this team's going to draft or sign a free agency or whatnot. If the plan is right now, at least to start the season with Dan Moore at left tackle, then there's only one place for Broderick Jones to play.
Right. And while I know people would want Dan Moore to be benched, they're not benching him. So I'm glad Jones is at least playing at right tackle to get some NFL snaps, as opposed to him sitting on the bench just so you're not playing him at right tackle.
I will say this, though, on top of it, if Broderick Jones is there for the rest of the season at right tackle and no injuries happen, and you think, good Lord, this guy is grading out well on a week-to-week basis, I'm not a fan of fixing things that aren't broke.
Yeah, I get that. It seems like Jones can probably play either side. So he'll get more comfortable at right tackle. He's talked about being more natural left side because he's been a left tackle in his career, but I think he'll get some experience at right tackle. Okorafor was a left tackle in his career. He flipped over to the right side and, adjusted, well to it. Jones, obviously more upside, more potential, but that's the overall thought there.
Let's hit one more from Seth here and get out of here. Just catching the Wednesday podcast discussion of the offense having no margin for error, needing to protect the football, and that leading to a very conservative offense. I'm wondering, do you guys see that as an indicator of the staff's confidence level in Kenny individually, or do you think it's more just looking at the whole offense, seeing they're not scoring and thinking we can't turn it over, and Kenny just being one part of that? I could see either way, but it's hard to imagine a Sullivan getting greedy, quote, if they thought they could get top end quarterback play from their guy. First and foremost, as we said, there's been instances where Kenny's not let it rip overall. I do think I think more than 5 times a week, Mike Tomlin's telling them, don't turn the football over for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I would just say it's more the overall picture. This is not a high-scoring offense. It has not been for many years, and the numbers show and how they won the back half of last year, because they went after the bye last year. They turned the ball over like in 2 games or something of the 9 that they played, something ridiculous like that, and they won because of it. So they're just going off of how they've won and how they've succeeded so far. And so that's, don't turn the ball over. They're a defensive team. It's a defensive coach. They trust their defense to make plays, and so that is how they're trying to build this thing.
Are they a conservative offense as a whole? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's not in dispute by anybody.
Now, the problem becomes these close late game wins are great because they're W's. I don't care how you get them in the NFL. If you win a game, that's something. And it goes back into us talking about Kenny. What's going to happen when you get into these games where you need to score because your defense can't get off the field and giving up 27, 28 points? Can your offense open it up?
Sure, that is the high floor, low ceiling nature of how this team is being built and run.
Is this an indicator? Let's get to the core of his question. Do you guys see that as an indicator of the staff's confidence level in Kenny individually right now?
It's a part of that, but it's not just about Kenny. It's about the offense as a whole, and it is a lot of their trust in this defense to win games, because they have been doing it for essentially a full season. The back half of last year and the first half of this year has been defensively driven, low scoring, one possession wins, and they're just going to try to ride that as long as they can.
Look, I think Mike Tomlin knows that stat that we wrote about this past week. If a Steelers team right now doesn't turn the football over, they're hard to beat right now.
Right, even more so than your typical team.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers, I think, prove that, and that is why there's such an emphasis on protect the ball. That is paramount in Pittsburgh.
Look, whatever you think about Kenny Pickett to this point, it's going to be fun to look at these final 9 games, especially against, you got some lower end teams there, and then you've obviously got 4 games against a very tough AFC North division. So it's going to be fun to have that talk at the end of the season of how he did in these final 9 games.
Yep, we'll be watching, we'll be recapping, and we'll see where things stand come January.
All right, let's see. Anything else? I think we got it, right?
Yeah, I think pretty long show. Might have touched 2 hours today, so I'll be back Monday and recap what happened on Sunday.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Like an ad-free version, find the ad-free button on SteelersDepot.com as well, too. We've got the scouting reports up for the game, offense and defense. Alex and the guys put together. Please get by SteelersDepot.com and read over those. Got a lot of great content, keys to the game, a whole bunch of weekly stuff that we do ahead of the game here over the weekend here. I hope you joining us. Obviously on Saturday, going to be probably a busy day, or could be a busy day with possibly an elevation and things of that nature. So until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.